Hope you're all doing well on this Tuesday evening. A little bit of time lapse there. Figured I'd show you a little bit of this tropical air mass sparking off a few showers and thunderstorms. We had a little bit of thunder about 3 hours ago. And here's what we got on the map. Do you see any changes from the past couple days? Well, you can't really... Some of you experts may be able to see that, but one thing that might be helpful is this pressure overlay. And I'm looking at the isobars in black. See these solid black lines? And we're seeing values go up from 14 to 16 to 10, 18. So we have high pressure up here. Let me check my monitor so I can make sure you can see this. Okay. Yeah, so we have high pressure up here, and we have to go way down into South Texas, down in this area, to find low pressure. So what we're getting there is we're getting a northerly flow, a weak northerly flow, instead of the usual southeasterly flow. And that's very significant. This flow over the past few days has changed from southeasterly and then carrying that moisture up into the northern plains, and then became more easterly over the weekend, and now we've basically got a northerly component. And what's the result when that happens? Well, let's take a look at this. I'll show you this. In fact, let me switch over to the other polar orbiter satellite. So what do you see here? Looks like Louisiana and Arkansas are very devoid of clouds. That's a big change. However, we see a lot more clouds in West Texas and Arkansas. And that's kind of tied into the low-level flow. Check this out. Normally, we have southeasterly flow that carries the moisture on up into the northern plains. So a lot of that activity kind of bypasses Texas. But when we pick up this easterly flow, we end up with upslope flow. So instead of the air going parallel to the ground contours, it climbs up from like 500 feet to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet. So what that does is that helps increase the humidity of the parcels as they go upslope. You get parcels closer to their LCL, and you tend to squeeze out a lot of clouds and showers. In the wintertime, this can be a very important generator of low clouds and fog. If the humidity is high enough, we'll see ceilings go down very quickly overnight when we have northeasterly flow like that. But in the summertime, we get this big ramp up in shower activity in the higher terrain of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. So that's a huge change there. And let's carry this forward from about 11 a.m. to maybe 1 p.m. You can see things really start picking up across most of the state here. One thing that's pretty cool is to zoom in really tight on these, because these are 250-meter images, so you can really get really tight on these clouds and see some cool detail. This is in the Fort Worth area. You can see Loop 820 here. There's I-20 here, Mineral Wells. So this is about maybe 25 miles across. So you can really see these towers come together. And more importantly, you can see the boundaries and cloud streets that they're forming along. So there you go. It looks like maybe there's some sort of boundary here. You see this area of suppressed cloudiness in here? That's kind of the cellular structure we have that formed today, and we get the storms forming right there along the leading edge. So it seems like that's the case in a lot of these areas here too. A little bit of that cellular type stuff going on. So there's a lot of fine scale structure in the atmosphere. It's very hard even for the models to resolve. So these satellite images can be very important for keeping up with what's going on from hour to hour. So let's kind of look around. We'll go down to San Antonio here. What kind of cloud do we pick up here that we don't have up here? Well, you can see that kind of foggy appearance there. That's a little bit of cirrus overlaying these lower clouds. That's probably cirrus debris from stuff yesterday, kind of hanging around there in the humid air. And that kind of casts that veil over that area. And we're probably going to take a look at the Corpus Christi sounding. Corpus Christi is right there. And we'll kind of get an idea of what that's showing. We can see on the satellite it looks very tropical. In fact, there's this disturbance right offshore. You can see that cyclonic spiral appearance there. Very weak system, but we may see a bit of that tropical moisture coming across the radiosonde site. So let's go out to West Texas. Here we get more orographic stuff. The clouds are a lot more vertical. That's because we have the Davis Mountains out here. Why is my tool not coming up here? I think my drawing tool... Okay. It's getting a little haywire here. Let me see if I can restart it. Okay, there we go. So there's our more vertical orographic stuff over the Davis Mountains, which are located right around here. This is the junction of I-20 and I-10, and that goes off to El Paso there. And as you go north of there, you get Guadalupe Pass. That's a very neat mountain for a couple of hours hiking. You can get to the top of an 8,000-foot mountain there. It's worth checking out. Maybe one of these days when I get a vacation, I'll take you guys out there and maybe we can do a special program there from the hotel room and maybe show some of that. That's some ideas I have for later on. Okay, as we come out to this area, you see the clouds get very blurry. We're getting pretty close to the edge of that swath. See how these images come in swaths from the satellite? So when that happens, they've got a good overlap system. You can switch to the other satellite. That'll kind of fill in a little bit what's happening in between. So there we go. There's the Tucson area. You can see clouds going up around Mount Lemmon. And as we get into the Central Valleys, you can see Phoenix there, very clear. So there's a dry desert air covering Phoenix. We'll check out the sounding around there too. I think all we've got to go on is Tucson, so we'll check that out in just a few minutes. Then getting out to California looks pretty clear until we get up to the northwest, and then we pick up some more weather systems up in that region. All right, so there's our little satellite tour that'll give you a little feel for what we see on those close-up visible images. The new GOES satellites are going to be operational next year, and we're going to see half-mile resolution from those. It's going to be only slightly worse than what I'm showing you here, the 250-meter images. The new images will be 500-meter resolution, so you're going to have to get kind of accustomed to dealing with very fine-grained satellite imagery in the years ahead. So that'll be a major thing to look at. Let me switch over to the... I'm going to switch to the chat room very briefly because I want to make sure that our audio is okay. So let me flip over to that real quick. Showing you here the 250 meter
audio,
images. The new images will be 500 meter resolution. So you're going to have to get kind of accustomed to dealing with very fine-grained satellite imagery. I'm going to set it back on my control room page. Okay. Just making sure that's going. All right. Let's continue. Going to take a quick look out at the desert southwest there. You can see very typical weather for late August. In fact, it's a little bit on the warm side. A few 110 degree readings there through the Salton Sea, Palm Springs area. And let's go ahead and take a look at those soundings real quick. We looked at the satellite imagery. And now we want to look at these soundings. And I'm thinking maybe tomorrow night I might try to do that special sounding tutorial program that I was talking about. So you might want to keep an eye out for that. Okay, here's our Corpus Christi sounding. What do we got here? Looks moderately unstable. The reference line for whether the sounding is stable or not is going to be this moist adiabat right there. And it looks like we're leaning a little bit to the left of that, so that's what we're going to characterize as moderately unstable. And even more importantly, we have a lot of moisture. Look how close the green moisture line is to the red temperature line. And it's very close all the way up, so that's very tropical. That's telling us that any kind of lift we get in this air mass, which is pretty uncapped, is going to generate showers and thunderstorms. And this is normally what we see across much of the tropics, the Caribbean. During the rainy part of the year, we'll see soundings like this. Let's go out to Tucson. Remember, we were seeing very warm desert air. So there's that inverted V right there. Dew points at the surface are running about 52 Fahrenheit. It's a little bit on the moist side for that area. But if we get any storms out of that, we're going to pull out an LCL of about 12,000 feet. So very dry air there. And even though we're pretty unstable in the lowest 10,000 feet, we've got warm air above that, so that's going to help put a damper on anything that develops. And let's take a look at one crazy sounding. Let's go up to Alaska. Let's go up to the very north. Barrow. Let's look at the surface chart real quick on that, just so we can see what kind of air masses are involved. So I'm going to go to College DuPage, or no, I'm sorry. We're going to go to NCAR. I'm going to click on the Alaska sector there. So what do we got in Alaska? Well, when we're looking at an unusual area like this, we always start with the large scale picture. So look at the large scale wind field, like pick a point here, 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 for example, and just kind of compare them. So what I'm seeing here is a general cyclonic flow to the winds here. And that's suggesting that we probably have a low pressure system right off the coast like that, with high pressure up to the north. So do we have any fronts? Well, that's hard to tell. The temperatures are very warm up there in Alaska, lots of 70s, 60s, and 70s. And I don't see any strong temperature boundaries. It looks like a lot of the temperature gradients are orographically related, for example. But anyway, let's look at Barrow. They're way up here at the top of the screen. 41 degrees there with fog. So it looks like they're under the influence of some Arctic air. I think probably the Arctic Ocean is probably devoid of pack ice up there. So let's check that out and just kind of learn a little bit about soundings there. The Barrow sounding looks like this. So what do we see here? Well, this part of the sound looks pretty familiar. We see a lot of that here in the U.S. What's unusual is this part down here. There's a lot of cold air. And we know it's cold because this segment of the sounding way down near the ground is way off to the left. So we have a temperature here of about 38, 39 Fahrenheit. And if we got just 5,000 feet above the ground, we would see things warm up to 46 Fahrenheit. So quite an increase in temperature there. Are you going to get showers and cumulus clouds and stuff like that out of this? Well, let's add some surface heating. We construct our parcel like that and lift it like this. And it's way left of the environmental temperature line. So the air is very, very stable. It's not going to support any convective cells going up there. Any cells that do rise are going to sink right back down. So this looks pretty fair. It's conducive to the formation of fog and clouds underneath this inversion. And above that, a lot of clear air. And look at this area of humidity up here. See where the green line comes close to the red line? This is a cloud layer right here, based at about 24,000 feet, topped out at about 34,000. So there's probably some high clouds in that layer right there. When I did aviation forecasting, that's one of the things we would look for. And when I issued METAR observations, I would sometimes pull up the sounding just to see what the height of the base was, and I would report that. Okay, let's go ahead to our forecast. Going to look at the GFS here. What's the GFS showing? Let's start with the current picture. The purple shading shows where the deepest, richest moisture is, and that's just off the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi and south of I-10 in Texas. And you can see this high pressure nosing into the northern plains. Low pressure there at James Bay up here at the very top. Looks like a weather system coming through the Midwest. In fact, let me show you that very quickly. I know there's a couple of you in Indiana there and Ohio, so I figure I'll show you this very quickly. This is the Midwest, and it's showing the weak northwesterly flow coming into Indiana, contrasting with the weak calm winds. Actually, I'm just going to sketch right through here. Look at all these calm winds here. So the leading edge is right through there. And on the Polar Orbiter satellite, I'm sure you can probably see that boundary. Let me switch over to that. Yep, see that boundary right there from north of Indianapolis to south of Champaign, all the way to almost St. Louis. So that's a boundary you would look at for convection later on in the day. There's all kinds of cool stuff on the Worldview site. Let me show you the URL on that. So yeah, I could look at that for hours. A lot of cool stuff on there. Okay, the forecast. Getting back to that, the GFS forecast. Let me run this ahead a few days, and we can see the high pressure in Ontario building southward, and that's driving out the low-level moisture in the southern U.S. So watch this happen. See how that's shoving the moisture out? So we're going to see dry advection, some milder air coming in from the north. We're still getting a little narrow corridor through the I-35 area, but around the Mississippi River area and into Georgia and the Carolinas, looks like it'll be probably some nice weather for a few days. Okay, then let's see here. Going into Monday, Tuesday next week. Not a whole lot of change, but we bring up another slug of moisture. See that right there? That's around Tuesday. So it looks like rain chances might go up midweek for the eastern half of Texas. And it looks like we have a new Pacific system coming in. See this here? There's a low pressure area right there in a front pushing rapidly eastward. So that's bringing in some Pacific air behind from this high pressure area right here off the coast of Oregon. And looks like a hurricane out in the Pacific along Baja California. Things are getting a little more active. We're getting towards fall. And that's definitely going to bring some rain to probably the eastern half of the country here. Then a very quick look at the upper air patterns. Let me move the chart here so you can see this a little better. Okay, very progressive pattern with two large troughs and a ridge in the middle of the U.S. Then as the week continues, we get towards the weekend. Looks like we're going to be under the ridge for most of the week, and then we get this big trough moving into the western U.S. By next week, trough continues digging in, and we get this very strong jet taking aim on the central U.S. there. So we're probably going to, that supports the chances of rain going up next week for a lot of the U.S. Looks like things will be active there for a while, so we'll keep an eye on that there. And then just a quick look at the NHC hurricane situation. Not too sure what these are going to do. Looks like they're just kind of wandering around probably need to go to the GFS to see what those are going to do. Let me just run this real quickly. You can see the system right here. It looks like that shoves that on into Florida there in Georgia, so that'll probably recurve back to the northeast. Assuming that model forecast holds out there. Gaston will continue recurving north, and then we got this new system off the African coast, a new easterly wave, and they've got that moving towards the Caribbean, the Antilles, and Puerto Rico. So that'll be in about 5 or 6 days. We'll keep an eye on that and see what that's going to do. Anyway, I think that's about all I've got. I appreciate you watching, and a couple minutes before I went on the air, I captured this sunrise shot here. I'm kind of loading this up right now, so I'm going to leave you with this, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.